Hello. Welcome to Super Fast Tortoise, and today I got a different kind of video for you. And this video is for me. And we're talking about talking tips for going live. I don't know if you watched my live show with Prime, but I kind of suck at talking live to people. So I went on a tangent and did a lot of research, going through multiple videos and articles about speaking live like a radio host and how not to be boring. Well, see, me recording this right now, talking to you, I'm very comfortable, very energetic, because I know I can edit this video and throttle around with it. Throttle, like that's a word. But you know, I can toggle around with it. I can make this video my own. But today, we're talking about talking tips. How to be a better communicator going live. And this is an educational video for me, because I need to learn these things and get comfortable with them. And if it helps you, well, that helps everyone. And that is value to our lives. And we start right now. So talking tips, right? I got this trusty list of things I wrote down, these notes to kind of go around, and that's going to be one of the tips, is about having notes. We'll get there when we get there. But the first thing you want to do when you are talking live to an audience, not recording like I am right now, you want to have a sense and feel of your audience. You want to know your audience. Like my audience, I assume, are casual Magic players, cube builders, and people who invest in the game. And some of you also play Commander. Commander is like the main game here, right? Commander is the main thing in Magic. Even though I'm waiting for a pro play to come back. But the second tip I have is to have a script. See, I told you this would come up. Have a script, but more like show notes and guidelines. Not everybody talks by reading off a piece of paper. It's not always comfortable, because sometimes you have to improvise. And people like me has to have the flexibility to improvise and say what they need to say. Like, cats are adorable. Like this video if you agree. If you're not a cat person, comment why cats are not cool. And with having a script, you can put in jokes, whatever. You put in bullet points to keep the show flowing, because you're going to have a timed layout of how long your show goes. So you kind of need to keep things in place that keep the pace going in your show. So having a script and show notes are important for us. Yes, very much for us. Which goes to our next tip. Be yourself. Don't overplay yourself. Don't oversell yourself. But be your personality. Yes. And as it says here, emphasize your quirks. So when you're trying to be funny, give a little emphasis. When you're trying to make a point, give a little emphasis at the point you're making. So when you're talking about like show notes, for example, and I'm like, hey, you want to remember your show notes. You see how I emphasize that to make it sound different? You want to be that way. I know that sounded weird, but you want to be in that mindset that when you're talking, you want to talk like you're talking with a personality, and you want to talk with your personality. So in a way, you want to know yourself. And the more you know yourself when talking is just do talk. Next tip is be mindful of how you speak, right? This is something I struggle with, because I don't know how I sound all the time. I've watched many videos, and I watched my own videos over and over again, and I understand how I sound recorded. But when you're live, you got to be mindful of how you speak. And by being mindful, and you have to have inspiration, right? And by that, I mean, look at someone that talks professionally. Could be from TED Talks. Could be a famous speaker. It could be Morgan Freeman. You know, it could be anybody you want. And thumbs this video up if you like Morgan Freeman, because he is awesome. And anyways, so find someone that inspires you or that you find inspiring to listen to. It could be Joe Rogan. It could be anybody. And try to encompass your personality and your vocals to sound like them. And practice this, right? But I need to find my comfort zone in sounding like them. Find inspiration of who you want to sound like. You know what I mean? Like, does this make sense to you? Because it makes sense to me to try to sound like the person you want to be. Like, if I wanted to sound like Optimus Prime, I would inspire to sound like the great, the amazing Peter Cullen. Yes. Even though I just mimicked David Kaye. One of the most amazing Megatrons out there. Anyways, next tip I have is practice speaking. Practice speaking comfortably. While you're trying not to oversell yourself, you need to be comfortable with the idea of speaking comfortably to strangers, right? And you got to make them less stranger. You got to make them your audience. And you kind of want to know your audience. So in your head, you want to build your audience to what you think it is so you can be more comfortable with speaking to them. And that leads us to a very important point. Knowing your audience is knowing how you feel about your audience. So have an opinion about your audience. Make a positive opinion about your audience. You don't want a negative opinion. You'll get negative feedback from people anyways, but you want a positive vibe with your audience, because the more positive you make your audience, the more robust and positive you're going to be. You know, you're going to talk to strangers you don't even know, but when people hop on to watch your live, to watch what you recorded, they're going to feel that positivity. They're going to feel drawn into you. So you need this positive outlook. Don't be negative. You know what I'm saying? Don't be negative. But have a positive outlook on what your audience is. And get that practice in like you're talking to them. If you need to, talk in the mirror. Do some vocal exercises. You know, get yourself comfortable with that strange feeling of talking to strangers. Now, the next tip is give 110% of yourself into your project. You know, when you're live, you know, give yourself 110% energy when you're talking. Like I am right now. I give 110% all the time. You know, just a smudge or a smidge above 100%. Be yourself 100%. And just add 10% to that. You know, like I talk with my hands. You know, and I say, you know, a lot. You're not trying to. One of the things I got to work on. But when you're talking with your hands, like I do in real life, I don't really talk like this. I don't strut my hands around like this. Because in real life, when you're talking to somebody, that gets annoying. But on YouTube or on video, it expresses and relays energy and feeling. You know, when I'm sad, I can pull it in. When I'm serious, I can... No, I don't want to make a fist, but, you know, I can make a stern motion. You know, making a fist is bad for YouTube. It's bad because it relays negative energy. The next tip is very important, and I struggle with too, especially when live. See, I'm recording this, so I got this tip down. What is this tip? This tip is take ownership of your words. When you speak and when you make a video, right, like I am now, you're taking ownership and showing authority. Right? But when you're live, you got to relay that same kind of thing. Like I am telling you to take ownership of your words. You know, because when you talk, when you're live, you have authority of what you say. You could be wrong on some subject, but when you speak, you're an authority in what you're saying. And that is important to know. Because if you're wrong, you got to take ownership of it, right? But when you're talking and you're relaying information, you have to have authority in everything you say. And this brings me to the next tip, is be invested in what you say, right? When you're invested in what you say, this is one of the important reasons why you have show notes or a script, is when you're invested, it brings out the passion. And when you have a passion, it brings out the raw emotion that you want. And this is something that I struggle with, especially when live. You know, when I'm live, I get hesitant. I'm afraid to be authoritative. And this is the thing I'm working on. And hopefully this helps you too. And when I'm done editing this video, I hope I've edited it right to help relay the things you want to hear. Now, I want this video to be good for the common person who's trying to get into the YouTube or live scene. When you're invested, or to be invested in your topic when live, and this is something I kind of made up myself because I didn't really find this in the tips and tricks of things I was looking at, but it made sense. In order to be invested in your topic, you have to have a prerequisite opinion about your topic. You got to form your own opinion before talking to people about your topic. Like, you could be talking about magic cards and the market and how it's going up and down. But in order to sell it, to be believable and to be entertaining, you have to have your opinion, good or bad. Like, this is a tough one. Like, if you have a bad opinion about something, you have to have a positive vibe about it. And in this, and this is a little thing I'm throwing in, but in this, if you have a negative or positive vibe about it, you got to be accepting of someone else's opposition of your topic, because you don't want to close down a conversation when live. You want to keep the conversation going. If it builds up, it builds up. And that's how you want it to be. You're going to bring up a conversation that you're invested in and have your own opinion about, and it's going to rise to the top where it's going to be, then it'll eventually settle to the next topic. And the next tip, and this one's very hard for me when I am live, is you got to be energetic. It is super easy to be energetic when they're pre-recording, right? I can pre-record all day with this energy, knowing that I can edit it, take out the boring stuff. And I'm going to try to leave in all the boring stuff in this video to see how energetic I am. But I'll cut what I can out to make time go by faster. But in order to be energetic, you got to have the prerequisite opinion. You got to be invested in your topic. You got to feel confident and know you're an authority of what you're talking about. You know, all these tips that I've talked about already build up to being energetic. Having a script and show notes to follow make it easier to be energetic, because you can always fall back on your show notes to remember where you are, to bring you back where you need to be so you can keep on topic. You know, kind of have things pre-planned, but be able to fly off the seat of your pants when needed. Which brings us to a next tip. And our next tip is very important. I mean, very important. And I say this and emphasize how important this tip is because I struggle with this a lot. I'm a very shy person in reality. Like, I am shy, I shut down easy, right? Next tip is don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. When you're live, you got to be okay with being uncomfortable. This builds personal growth, to be okay with being uncomfortable, and it lets you be more confident. Like, it helps build your confidence up when you're uncomfortable live. You got to be able to flow with the flow. You know, you got to go with the flow. I mean, you know, you got to be able to be like, okay, I accept that I'm uncomfortable, but I want to keep the show going. And the reason why you have to be okay with the uncomfortability is because you're going to have an opposition to what you're saying. You're going to have banter back and forth. People are going to make things harder for you, and just in general. And you got to be okay with that. You got to accept the fact that things are going to be harder than they appear. Because it's not easy to be the one behind the camera talking, and all of a sudden, if you're bipolar like me, have something stumble in your way and makes it feel like you shut down. Like I shut down easy. But I need to, like someone like me, I need to be able to get comfortable with it quick and inference the difference. I got to be better at accepting a hit, and that's how it is. You got to be able to take the emotional switches, and instead of reacting badly or shutting down horribly, I got to be more accepting of it so I can get over it quicker. And the quicker you get over these differences and uncomfortabilities, the more I can transfer the conversation and keep it up and flowing and entertaining. And that is something I want to work on personally. Like I said, this is a big one. Sorry, been drinking coffee all morning. I'm like caffeinated up, going poof, crazy. The next tip is a good one too. As the next tip, I don't know how to say this without giving an example, right? So you want an example? This next tip is going to build your personality, and all these other tips, it's going to make you stronger, right? It's going to sound stupidly simple, but it's harder to execute. Once you hear this next tip, it's going to change the way you think. And this next tip is build interest in your conversations. Yes, build interest in your conversations. Find ways to open up a conversation creatively. Kind of hype it up without giving away the end of your subject. If you have a topic, say you're talking about Magic cards and the new spoilers, and you want to open it up, you don't want to be like, hey, you got all these spoilers and we're looking at these cards right away. No, you want to talk up like the excitement of the set, like, oh, these spoilers are amazing. You're going to want to see them, and let's check them out to see the powerful craziness. You got to be creative with it, and creativity doesn't have to go deep, and it doesn't have to go super far. You just want to build interest in the topic as you go from topic to topic to keep people interested in the topic, right? And that's just simple, but it's important. With all these tips I added, it makes sense. And the last tip I find very inclusive. And by inclusive, I mean this hits home, and I think will solve a lot of our problems when we're talking live. Yes. When talking live, what's one of the biggest enemies you have? That is dead air. So, in your show notes, have questions written down, right? Have hypothetical questions in your pocket. So when you find yourself in dead air, just pop out a question. It could be random, or it can be tandem to the topic. Like when you're struggling to keep the conversation going, you don't have like a good thing to interfere with the silence, create a hypothetical question. Say you're talking about cards in Magic, right? Let's say you're talking about like these spoilers, and there's this card that you're debating on, and all of a sudden you guys kind of go into a standstill with the conversation because your oppositions are kind of in the way. Hurry and create a hypothetical question. Like, say you're talking about a card and you're trying to figure out between the two of you or the mix of you if it's a good card in limited. Just go with that. Create a hypothetical question. Be like, is this card going to be good in this kind of deck? Or how would you play this card in your limited deck? Simple, something like that. Open it, hypothetical questions leave open-ended answers, and that builds and breeds conversation. And that makes sense. It makes sense. If the topic can keep going till it is about time for it to die out to the next topic, that's great. But if you find ways using all these tips to create a conversation that keeps going and flowing until the time you have to cut it off, that breeds interest into your show. That breeds interest. And I know I keep saying breeding, but you have to think of it that way. You got to find a way of naturally creating interest in your topics, in your shows. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, my friends, play wise. I totally want to thank you for watching today's video. I really appreciate it, 100%. Like this video as if it's your favorite kind of pizza, dude. And if you wouldn't mind, consider smashing that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications. Every one of these things you do helps the channel out a lot.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't get along with anybody, honestly. I've been living in my own head constantly, thoughts jumbled around, think I need a new lobotomy. Wait, all these thoughts are too negative, I don't wanna get lost in the sedative. Gotta show them what I got, I'm competitive. You know I'm about to go off, I won't let them win, I'll take a stab. I wanna chase the bag, I wanna weigh, I can change all the things I lack. I gotta face the facts, I gotta